Alright, so I wanted to make a video here. I just kind of ran it on Facebook a little bit. Let me take these off. I uh, I saw this thing in the news, our local news. So the current situation in Portland, that's like the talk of the town, is there are a lot of refugees that are currently staying in the Expo Center, which is where they do like sports events, and I think they do like ice skating in the winter. And they've converted that into a shelter for refugees that came from the border. And historically, Maine's always helped our asylum seekers without much issue, I guess, or complaint. But now, however, what's kind of happened is the reason that they're there is because our shelters are all full to complete capacity. Um, Beyond that, there's lots of people who are actually like sleeping in tents in my city in Portland, Bangor, and all throughout the state. I recently was talking to somebody in the Maine Veterans Alliance, and they travel all over the state where there are camps and abandoned buildings out in the woods. Um, there's I think it was Sanford. They were saying there's no organization at all other than them helping these people that are. There's growing numbers of them, and the point I wanted to get to with this video eventually will be dialectics. That's how issues like this get polarized. So really, nothing gets done, or they can drag it out as long as possible, and that's what I see happening here. Um, the number of people homeless in Portland or in the state of Maine comparatively to like at any large city in the rest of the nation, we don't have that many. It should not be that hard to get all of these people into housing. um, I've seen a lot of things in regards to this from behind the scenes, and for years I've known how this is happening and why this has not changed. So instead of typing a bunch of shit out, I figured I'd make a little video, speak my piece, because this is something that it bothers the hell out of me, and I don't know how to fix it. So I'm going to foreshadow this a little bit by saying that I believe wholeheartedly that we should be able to help both the citizens and the immigrants and the refugees without too much of an issue at all. I think that everyone should be able to be helped in some regard to get a roof over their head and not be at risk of dying sleeping outside in the winter. Um, so you look at the people who have been homeless in Portland for a couple years. You know, we have several housing programs here. There's Section 8, there's BRAP, there's Shalom House. So there's a program for if you have a mental illness, you can get housing for that, and they'll pay your rent. So you can focus on the social services getting better. If you're going to AA meetings or whatever, it's really good. It's like the housing first approach, which is essentially the idea that if you take care of housing, then you can focus on all of the other issues, and that's the best way for someone to recover from multiple things at once like that. So we have all of these programs that have uh, offered to provide the rent for most of the people in the shelter and some of the people who are living in these camps outside the shelter, but landlords will not rent to them. The reason for this they'll give you is oh, your credit score is too low, or because you don't have enough references. The whole housing system is stacked against anybody who is homeless. um, it's nearly impossible for a homeless person to get an apartment in the city, and that's why they've basically, once they've ended up in the shelter, they're stuck there. um, what I've seen landlords do, so one thing that It's messed up as all hell. So they will call the Portland Housing Authority. And this took several years for this to happen. First, what they did is, instead of having leases ending like every month, different times, all of the landlords in the city have lumped, so the leases will end in the same like period of a few months, which is during the summer. So all the buildings have to be full in the heating season. Besides that, so what they do is they call the Portland Housing Authority. They find out what they will actually pay for rent on the vouchers for disabled people, for veterans, for homeless, for elderly people, and say they will pay $830 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. All the landlords will raise the rates above that. So when you come in with a voucher saying you have assistance for rent, oh, we don't have anything in your price range. And now all of a sudden they're not discriminating, because they're just telling you you can't afford it. And the same thing with the credit checks. Oh, I'm sorry, your credit's not high enough. And what could really be happening is, say you have a child, they don't want to rent to you because you have a child, so they'll deny you because of your credit score, or they'll tell you to get a cosigner. Maybe you don't have a cosigner, and the whole thing is rigged from the get-go. And the direct result is, none of the people who have been in the shelter for years are going to be able to get out, because the whole system is completely corrupted. All of the landlords would much rather bring people in from other states who can pay these exorbitant rates, and that's because most of the buildings hadn't been taken care of for 40 or 50 years. There was no regulations until recently, or follow-up on building code, for example. And in our city, we had the Noise Street fire. For people who don't live here, there was a building in our town that burnt to the ground. A bunch of people died in it, and part of the reason this happened was because the building wasn't up to code. So they've been going through the city, checking all the buildings for code violations and making sure all of the landlords actually fix these things. And at the same time, rents have been skyrocketing, and most people can't afford that. And I think there's definitely a direct correlation between the fact that they're cracking down on how unsafe a lot of these buildings have been for a long time. And instead of paying for it with the money that they've made over all of this time, the tenants are. All of these new tenants are paying for things that it's crazy, and that's what's resulting in more people ending up in the shelter. Now, you have these refugees that are also here in Portland. There is a private fund that raised $1 million, so it could also pay for the rents and housing costs and the things needed for them to get on their feet. And the report from the news said that they are considering just taking the money to reimburse costs that were already spent. So, from my understanding, any money that the government even has or is spending is because they took it from us. So, and this is how the housing programs have worked for a while. A lot of these are funded by taxpayer money. So, like, we are giving money to all of these programs for not only the veterans and the homeless people to have housing, and they're not getting it. Like, where is that money going if we're continually paying for these housing subsidies and nobody's using them? Or a very small number is using them. Like, what is being done with this money? And second, like, where is the oversight? If, like, we're spending our money to try and help the people in our community that need to be helped, and they're not getting any kind of help, like, we should be able to fairly say, hey, this whole system is hurting these people that we don't think should have to live on the street. Like, when is enough enough? But it blows my mind here that the government is actually planning on taking that $1 million and doing anything with it other than helping the people. That it's donations. Like, people just gave that money to help these people. Like, they didn't give it to, like, pay the government back. They didn't give it to whatever they actually would do with it if it was other than what it was intended for. And that just goes to show, what these officials really are all about. They're not thinking at all about the people that are in the shelter or staying in the expo right now. They're seeing dollar signs, and of all the things to see in the news, when the homeless in Portland have been a problem for a long time. It's an issue everywhere that's getting worse and worse and worse, and they're not solving that or the issue of the new people staying in the expo, and instead we're just taking the money back. That's not leadership, that's theft. That's the opposite of good leadership. And this is where dialectics comes in. So from my understanding, that is like the way that divide and conquer always works. That's how it's done. It was I think it originated by a philosophy in Germany in the 1600s, like Hegelian dialectics. It's like the left-right narrative. This is how every issue gets split into like for or against. Either you're for it or you're against it, or either it's a left thing or a right thing, when like the reality is like that's not the case, and there's never even really just two stances on anything. They give you two options, essentially. Like, even in this regard, this doesn't have to be a situation where either you only care about the veterans or you only care about the asylum seekers. But this is how it's presented to the people. It's like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can easily be both. And they want people fighting each other over, no, we should help the veterans first, or no, we should help the asylum seekers first, or whatever. Like, let's just help all of them, and like, if I think if anyone really rationally sat down and like started like looking at like how money is spent and what's done with it, like war, the destruction that is done in our name all across the world, that's one thing that could be stopped, and there'd be money to fund a lot of things here at home that are much needed. The same thing, like these crazy salaries that our officials are being paid, like why are you getting paid like millions and millions of dollars to do anything but what the majority of people seem to want? It seems like there's never an excess of problems. It seems that it's always just being fed some other line. Like our media is completely corrupt. Like, we're not told the truth anymore. The more we start to read the laws being passed, we can clearly see that like both parties are really just working against the people. They're just keeping us fighting each other, and that's dialectics. Splitting things into a situation where you have to pick one party or the other, or you have to either be for this or against it. Like, there's no, it takes away people's ability to communicate when you do that for decades after decades. Like, and you look at it now on any situation. I would rather hear 10 different opinions, even if they all aren't mine and they all conflict with mine, because at the end of the day, that's critical thinking. Like, there's what we're doing is the exact opposite of that. Like, we're discouraging critical thinking, because the more we start to think we have to be into just one of two categories, like, we're discouraging the ability to evaluate so many different standpoints and then like all like come together and agree on the best of everybody's opinions and make like a really well-informed decision based on truth and facts. Like, that's the heart of it. Like, when things are split into this like left and right crap, or for and against crap, like into these two sides, and it's how everything has become these days. It prevents progress. Because there is no truth anymore. They want to be able to control what everybody sees and hears, and when they do that, we can't. something's got to give. So, you know, I wrote up like an article a while back. I guess I can throw it in the description on this video, you know, just a possible idea of how to like push back against that. But even it's like, that's really what I want to see more of in the world. Like, more people talking it out, more people learning from each other. Like, everyone out there, like, that's active against anything, you know. You don't do it because you hate people. You're not an activist because you hate people. I don't think so, at least. I don't think that anybody would like dedicate their time and money and resources and risk their safety in that regard because they hate people or they want to prevent the world from being better. You know, even if you do have different, you know, slightly different visions of what it would be like or how you get there, at the end of the day, everyone's trying to make the world better, you know. So if we could just all stop looking at it like it has to be my way or the highway, or it has to be this or it has to be that, like maybe we can all just like agree to just talk and learn from each other, because you know, like that's half of this process that I've found. It's internal. Like, I've had to look at myself a lot of times and be like, you know what, I'm wrong. Like, or I was wrong about that. Or, you know, like maybe this other person like knows something I don't know. And that's what the system wants us to stop doing, to stop questioning ourselves, to stop, you know, approaching each other with, you know, tolerance. This world is becoming chaotic. Like, we need to put more love out there. Like, we need to put the light back into these dark times. And, like, there's so many people out there doing that. And, like, that renews my faith, you know. But, like, at the same time, like, where I draw my strength is from, like, looking at these people. Like, these people in the shelter, you know. And I revere them with, you know, really high respect. Both of them, the refugees who fled here, as well as the people who've been living on the streets for years, because those people, no matter how bad it gets, they still keep trying. They're still out there surviving, and they're not giving up hope. You know, like, from the outside, it's like I don't really see any way to help them other than us standing up to that system and just calling it out for being as corrupt as it is. We need to advocate for them, but they don't lose hope no matter how hard it gets. They still keep on trucking, and that's where I draw my strength. If they can keep going, I can keep going. I know that. Like, I can keep doing it because it's not nearly as bad as what, like, most of those people are living through on the streets every day. Right now in Sanford, there's a huge issue where a lot of the people they're just living in camps. They're all getting beaten up and robbed, and there's fights, and people are stealing stuff from each other, and they don't know what to do about it. Like, it's getting really rough out there for people, and there's nowhere for them to go because a lot of corruption and biased and discriminatory practices are just allowed. Most of these big time property owners are friends with the city councilors, they're friends with the mayor, or the mayor rents from the company, you know. It's a deep rabbit hole. And you know, you talk about like organized corruption, like look at the landlord associations. All the rents in the city increase at the same time to the same amount, so no matter where you move, you can't find a cheaper apartment. You're just stuck in the winter. You know, they all do the same things. And that's the heart of it. It's the same way that they did the racial steering back in the 60s. The landlord associations, where people came in from like the national whatever, and they met with all the landlord associations. They told them how to do it and what to do, and that's how they kept all the colored people into segregated neighborhoods. It was through the landlord associations, and it's still done today. Instead of segregating just colored people, now they're segregating low income, They're segregating poor people, homeless people, mentally ill people with addiction. Like, the people who actually like need some help the most are the people who are being kept out of housing, and it's allowed to happen. I don't know if it's because people don't are scared. At our 420 march, I met one guy. He said he was trying to speak out about his landlord. Next thing he knew, police actually came to his house. Someone had him put on a psych hold, and they kept his driver's license. It was like incredibly sketchy, the things this guy said that happened to him when he tried to speak out against, I think it was a big company in Lewiston. But that's where most of the money is here. Right now in Portland, all the big money is in developing, building these big new condos. And, it is a scary thing. You speak out against your landlord, that's like, then you're evicted. And if you have an eviction on your record, you won't get another apartment. So it's like, how do you really go about doing something like that? It's like you're not only going up against big money, organized corruption that could span the whole state, but then it's like you're also risking your own livelihood to do it. And that's half of it. That's the other half. They split people into fighting each other over small details. And then at the same time, if people even overcome that, then they're scared to even speak out against it. And there's no shortage of situations where this is the case. It's fear-mongering. Something's got to give. Because, I'm just tired. I'm tired of seeing people fight each other. I'm tired of seeing these problems continue and not be fixed. The system's just got to go. Like, no politician's going to fix it. We keep electing them. Things keep getting worse. They promise us things will get better and they get worse. Like, I've known this was a joke for years. What is going to change? What is really going to ever change? Like, so we need to be the change. Whatever we do at the end of this revolution is up to us, because this is our time to stand up for our rights, our freedom, and everything is funded with our labor and our money. However you look at it, like, we the people we're what makes this country and this world run. The sooner we can all hold hands and recognize that, like, it doesn't matter what our ideas or our beliefs are, that statement is still true, and that we need to just stand up together. Like, we can still disagree on things in the future and things be a lot better than they are now. It's about not being exploited by a system that hurts everyone. Everyone. It's that simple. It hurts everyone. So I hope we see action soon. Not violent action, not destructive action. Peaceful, non-violent. Stand up, like, standing up and showing other Americans that, like, we can actually, like, advocate for, like, real change without fighting each other, because, like, that's what the system wants us doing. As long as we're fighting each other, we're not a threat to anything that could change anything. Like, they're probably laughing at us somewhere when we do that, because it's exactly what they want. Like, so, we've been watching France and Sudan since December. Now we have Hong Kong. I'm learning a lot from them. They've come up with some crafty techniques, to say the least. We've got Mauna Kea. Things are starting to happen. So, like, I'm very hopeful that, like, we can do something big as a people that's good for everybody. It's not about any one ism being better than another. It's not about everybody coming to believe the same thing as everybody else. That's not it, Yellow vest was never a political thing. It's never going to be. It's about measurable change. You know, the RIC is a tool. It's a way to have power over the laws, and it's something that can be done a lot of different ways from what I understand, you know. That's what needs to happen. Something that's not about politicians being the answer to the problems. It's not about asking the politicians to fix the problems. It's about saying, like, we're tired of this whole system, and since we fund it all and everything is done on our backs, we're going to take more responsibility for seeing that our society stands up to a moral compass, that we're going to fix our problems ourselves, because we know that we can run this country better in a more democratic fashion without all of this bullshit chained to us. Like, we can't get away from it. Like, every aspect of society is completely corrupted at this point. Politicians are infected with money from so everywhere. Our healthcare, it's in our food's being poisoned, our water's being poisoned, the crap they're spraying in the airs. No matter how many people don't want 5G, they're still gonna roll it out. Like, the reality is that it's like, I think only like 10% of society actually even has an influence on what Congress is doing. Like, get out of here with that shit. That's absolutely bullshit. But it's probably true. That's the world I've been living in. We keep voting for people that we hope are gonna fix some of these things, but nothing ever changes. It's not designed to. It's designed to just make us believe it's gonna change, and it never does. But what I do believe could change everything is we the people coming together and doing something different. I'm not a wise, old, seasoned philosopher, educator, or, you know, I'm just an average guy. But I do completely believe that if we the people came together, we would be able to figure out something that we could do that works much better than this. No matter what that is, that's the only way. You know, and so, like, when I went to France, and like I learned from how are these people doing this, like, staying motivated and growing this movement. And it's because when you get out there and in that revolution, people on the streets, you're learning from everybody. Everyone's talking and growing. They're not fighting each other, they're learning from each other. Everybody is taking knowledge from other people, and it truly is an awakening. And like that is why we need a non-violent revolution. No violence against the system, and no violence against each other. Like, no more hate and no more blaming each other. The only enemy is the system. That's what's got to go. So you know, as we continue to move forward, no one's ever gonna quit. Some people might, but I'm not going anywhere. I've seen too much. I know too much, and I can't really like sit with like the reality of the world being like this bad. You know, I grew up thinking it was like, yeah, obviously everything's fake, it's corrupt, it's BS, like no one has a say in anything. But how many people are like dying and like suffering? You know, it's like, I don't think that ever really truly sank in for me until like this year. And it's just like, I can't ever quit. Like, I can't stop, like, until something really changes. And like, it doesn't matter who it is, no matter who is elected for whatever position, like, that's never going to be changed for me. And like, I think if it doesn't change soon, I think a lot of people are about to wake up to that fact. Because it's like, if not before 2020, I think everyone's really gonna just, sooner or later it has to hit everyone. Like, it's all fake. It is all fake. Everything is scripted. It is like like I went into this thinking, okay, it's just corrupt and bullshit, like, but like it's like actually like scripted, like it is like so much more bullshit than I even thought it could be. Like, I digress. So, yeah, we need a revolution. I don't know if it's something that you can just like start. I don't think that's how it works. From how it seems so far between, you know, France, UK, uh, everywhere, Australia, Hong Kong, it's been organic. So pretty much come to terms with the fact that I just have to be patient. Patience will eventually something, it will reach its tipping point. People are waking up. I think we'll get it. But you know, for those who are awake, like let's just put some more good vibes out. You know, shit just seems stressful. You know, there's always the infighting, there's always the trolls, and I think a lot of that is just Facebook. That's always gonna happen on Facebook, no matter what. If you're one of the ones toughing it out, despite how annoying that is, like, hats off to you. Like, I got a lot of respect for everyone who's out here, like, telling truth and educating. Like, I'm definitely noticing that is having an effect. The more people are really just like learning so much in all of these different areas, I definitely see more togetherness being expressed on the internet. At least, I don't know if that's really a gauge for much. I was always a very firm believer that in real life people could come together much more easily than on Facebook. I know we see videos, there are places where that's not the case, but I live somewhere where it is. People really don't fight each other as much as they do in other places, and I really hope that we can get to a point where we see none of that. You know, we're all tired of so many different awful things. It's sad that in this day and age, with like the production and the workforce of all of our countries, that there would be homeless people, or that there would still be disease, or we would be being poisoned. I mean, I just read today that it's coming out through declassified documents that the reason there's fluoride in the water is because China won't put it in theirs because it's a neurotoxin, so they sell it to us and we put it in our water, and that's how they dispose of it. Like, they're literally disposing of chemical waste in our water knowingly. You know, it just breaks my heart. We really need to stand up, organize, and beyond just like actually like protesting in the street. Like, I think the angle of just like educating is a really great way to pass the time for those of us who are out here on the internet all the time. You know, educating people about how things could be done differently, what's actually happening. You know, I think a lot of people are going to want news in the coming months that doesn't have a political agenda attached to it, and that's something like we all can do, is continue to try and like show people what's happening without the political BS. Like, we've had enough of that. Like, we need to come together. So that's my little rant for today. I haven't done a video in a while. You know, I'm just like, I'm really sad for the things that just aren't changing. You know, Flint, bless Moses for being out there. He's helping with the water. He has this big machine that takes the moisture out of the air and provides a stream of fresh drinking water. But somebody's been damaging the machine, so now he has to fix it. But you know, years in, that's still not fixed, and there's thousands of other cities just like it. You know, the natives have the same problem. Pipelines are still being built, and it's just like on and on and on. So we got to educate people, you know, and it doesn't have to be attached to isms or uh, politicians. Like, just the knowledge, you know, like that's been the best thing for me with all of this, is like learning from other people. Like, I try to not judge anybody, you know, or approach them with like, oh, you're this, so like I can't talk to you, or I can't like listen to what you have to say. And that it's not, it doesn't need to be like that. Like, we can all learn from each other, like, and that's what like we need, like, so, you know, that's half of what I try and manifest in like my prayer and meditation. Isn't just that like we get this like revolution that changes everything, like that's important, but like before we even get there, it's like I hope that like we as a society can like heal and rebuild bridges between each other, like of communication, so, you know, everybody's knowledge can be at that table. Like, whenever we get to the point in time where we are fixing things ourselves, that like all of the best knowledge that everyone has can be brought into that, and that like everyone's opinions can be heard, so like nobody has to feel left out anymore. Like, I don't want that anymore. Like, I don't want a society where people feel left out, where people don't feel heard, and certainly where people who have given everything and risked their lives for society, you know, the veterans, or, you know, the people who fled here as refugees, because we've been tampering with the governments in South America for decades. Like, either way, like, all of these people have given enough uh, and sacrificed to just the corruption that must end. You know, it's not the veterans' fault that they fought in a war that may have certainly been caused by corruption or bad people for nefarious reasons. It's not their fault. At the end of the day, like, it really doesn't, it's not their fault. And they still protected this country, and they were willing to do whatever they had to do to make sure Americans were safe. So regardless of whose fault the wars are, they just need to stop, and we absolutely need to ensure that our veterans don't have to live in tents in the woods anymore. And the same thing goes for the asylum seekers. Like, there's decades of involvement that we have had between the drug cartels down there and the governments and the coups. These people would not be living in this kind of awful corruption if we hadn't been tampering over the decades with their governments. So it sucks for everybody, but they're here. Like, we can help them too. Like, if we had, say, a better court system to process the people coming in, like, they could just be citizens. Like, we could all be happy. We could all live together in harmony. I know it's more complicated than that. It's But I'm tired of fighting each other over who comes first, or just get rid of these people. Like, that's what the establishment wants. Like, what really should be the discussion is, how about we stop spending money on wars and all of these things that the people don't want to be spending money on, and instead